We've all been there.
We've
You
all
meet
been there.
someone new,
You
or
meet
someone
someone
you
new
kind of
or
know.
someone you
You
kind of
start
know.
with the
You
usual
start with
hi
the
hello,
usual hi,
followed by
hello,
go-to
followed by
questions
the
like,
go-to
what do you
questions
do?
like, what do you
Which
do?
team do you work
Which
in?
team do you
And
work
after a
in?
bit of back and
And after a
forth,
bit of back and
awkward
forth,
silence.
awkward
I've been here
silence.
many times,
I've been
not
here many
just at
times,
work, but at
not
a
just at
variety
work,
of different
but at a
social
variety
settings.
of different
Like
social
meeting a far
settings.
cousin at a wedding
Like
who I
meeting
haven't
a
seen
far
in
cousin at a
years,
wedding who I
or
haven't seen in
speaking to a
years,
random stranger
or
at a
speak
bar.
to a random
But what
stranger
if
at a
you could
bar.
speak to
But what
anyone
if you could
and
speak
never
to
run out of
anyone
things to
and
say?
never run
The
out of
problem
things to
is we
say?
all have
The
some
problem
level of
is that
social
we all have some
anxiety
level
which
of
plays
social
a role
anxiety
in our
which plays a role in
awkwardness.
our
But we're all
awkwardness.
at different
But
levels.
we're at
And
different
I
levels.
personally
And I personally
graduated to the more
graduated to the
advanced
more
levels without
advanced
any cheat
levels
codes.
without any
So over
cheat codes.
time I developed
So
my own
over
three
time, I
methods to
developed my
speak
own
to
three
anyone
methods to
and never
speak to
be awkward
anyone and
again.
never be awkward
Well,
again.
at least most of the time.
Well, at least
Initially, I blamed
most of the
myself
time.
for being too
Initially, I
shy,
blame
not
myself for
confident,
being too shy,
and
not
just a little bit
confident,
socially
and just a little
inept.
bit of
But like
socially
everyone
inept.
else, I was
But
the
like
exact
everyone else,
opposite
I was
around
the
people who
exact
I was
opposite
comfortable with.
around people
So
who
I
I
asked
felt
myself, what
comfortable with.
really is going
So
on?
I
How
asked
can one
myself what
person
was
have
really
such
going on.
opposite
How can one
personalities?
person have
What I
such opposite
realized
personality?
was that
What I
even though I'm
realized
an
was that
introvert, I don't
even
have
though
two
I'm introvert, I don't
personalities.
have two
And it wasn't
personalities,
even a
and
confidence
it
problem.
wasn't
It
even a
was a
confidence
skill
problem.
problem.
It was a
I
skill
simply
problem.
hadn't mastered
I
the art
simply
of
hadn't
small talk.
mastered the art of
And just
small
like
talk.
any other art
And just
form,
like any
like
other
learning
art
a new
form, like learning a
instrument
new
or writing
instrument or
poetry,
writing
speaking to
poetry,
people is a
speaking to
skill
people
which can be
is a skill
developed with
which
enough
can be
practice.
developed with
So
enough
through years
practice.
of trial and
So through
error
years
and
of
by
trial and
observing
error
people
and
better
by
than me, I
observing people
quickly
better than me,
understood
I
there are only
quickly
three
understood
things you
that
need
there
to
are
do
only
to
three
speak to
things you
anyone
can do to
fluently
speak to
and never run
anyone
out of things
fluently
to say.
and never
And the
run
best
out
part
of things to
is to
say.
implement
And the
these three
best part of
things
this is that
almost
you can
immediately.
implement these three things almost immediately.
What would you do if someone said the following? I
What
went
would you
to
do if
play
someone said the
golf over the
following?
weekend.
I want to
You
play
can
golf
either
over the
say,
weekend. You
oh,
can either
that's
say,
interesting,
oh,
and
that's
then stare into
interesting, and then
space
stare
whilst
into
listening to the sound
space
of
while listening
silence.
to the
Or
sound
you
of
can ask
silence.
intentional
Or
follow-up
you can ask
questions.
intentional
For
follow-up
example,
questions
where do
like,
you
for
usually
example,
play? How long
where
have
do
you
you
been
usually
playing golf
play?
for?
How
This will
long have
then
you
naturally
been
lead to
playing for?
further
And
follow-up
this will naturally
questions
lead to
like, do
further
you play
follow-up questions
competitively?
like, do
Are
you
you
play
part of a club? Now,
competitively?
you probably
Are you
couldn't
part
care
of a
less
club
about
now?
golf,
You
but
probably couldn't
firstly,
care
this
less about
shows that
golf,
you're
but this
genuinely
shows that
interested
you are
in what the
genuinely
other person
interested
has to
in what
say,
the other
or at
person
least
has
that's
to
the
say,
perception you're
or at least
creating.
that's the
And
perception you create.
secondly, this
And
removes any
secondly, this
awkward
removes
pauses and
any awkward
silences,
pauses
and
of
it also
silence
gives you the
and
power
also
to
gives you the
control the
power to control the
conversation and take it
conversation
into any
and take it
direction.
into any
Because when you really
direction.
think about it, a
Because when you really
conversation
think
is
about it,
simply a
the
series of
conversation
questions and
is only
answers.
simply a
And
series
the
of questions
person
and
who asks
answers.
most of the
And the person who
questions is
asks
usually
of
the
most
one
of
in
the questions is
control.
usually the
But for
ones who
this, it's
controls
important
it.
you're asking the
But
right
for this is
questions.
important when
And
you're
this is
asking
where
the
the
right
second
questions,
method comes in.
and this is when the second method comes in.
Now, the common misconception is
Now, the
that to
common
become better at
misconception
speaking, you need
is
to
to
speak
become
more.
better at
But like
speaking is
great
that you need to
paradoxes
speak to
in
people.
life, to
But like
improve your
great paradoxes
communication,
in
you need
life
to
to
do the
improve your
exact opposite
communication,
and
you need to do
actually
the
listen
exact
more.
opposite,
That
and
means
that
to
is actually
actively
listening
listen and do nothing
and
else apart
do
from
nothing
listening.
else apart from
Because it's
listening,
easy for our minds
because
to
it is
wander
listening
and
for
start
our minds
preparing
to
for a
start to
response
wonder and
rather than
start preparing
actually
for
listening to what's
responses
being said,
than actually
leading you to
listening,
say
but
something which is
what's
completely
being needed
irrelevant
to
and
say
off
something
topic,
completely
adding
relevant and off
further to your
topic
collection of
and
awkward
adding further to
moments.
the
But
collection
if
of
you
awkward
listen
moments.
intently,